Hello and welcome everybody to today's episode of the JBA On podcast, our first of 2021. Happy New Year's, everyone. Today, we're going to be doing our NFL playoff preview and playoff predictions. We're going to start with a playoff preview where we each give each individual team a spotlight and talk about how they got to the playoffs and what to look what to look out of them in the playoffs. And then we'll do our predictions where we predict every round of the playoffs and we end up giving you our final Super Bowl winner. We've been very inconsistent about our uploading recently. We apologize for that. Originally, we had an excuse, and that was finals, but now we don't. So we're gonna try to get back on it now with our normal upload schedule. Starting with this video. So let's start off with the first round in the NFC, the Saints and the Bears. I will talk about the Bears. So the Bears at the beginning of the season started off 5-1. Looked like they were playoff bound, even though no one had expected that out of them before the season started. But then they lost 6 straight games to put themselves at 5-7. But they finished the season strong, 3-1, and ended up making the playoffs at 8-8. And they looked really good in those 3 wins, scoring, especially their offense is scoring 30 plus in all the 3 of those games. The only knock on them in those games was that the teams that they played had terrible defenses. We can all agree the Vikings defense, the Jaguars defense, the Texans defense are not good defenses. And the one good team that they played, one playoff caliber team that they played, they absolutely got destroyed. They lost 35-16 against the Packers at their home field. So, we'll see where it goes against the Saints. I think that they're going to struggle against these playoff teams, especially the ones with a good defense. Packers don't have a great defense. Saints do have a great defense, so I think they're going to struggle even more this game. And their defense being as it is, it was a good defense to start the season, but recently it's been very, very poor. They just let teams score all over them. Packers scored 45, Vikings scored 27, Lions scored 34, Packers scored 41. They did have a couple good games. They held Texans to 7 points one game. Held Jaguars under 20 another game. But overall, I think that it's going to be really tough for them in the playoffs. But any given Sunday is an expression for a reason, and they'll still have a chance. But if I'm a Bears fan, I'm not expecting a win this weekend.
Yeah, and going against the Bears is going to be the 2-seeded Saints, and I don't see the Bears having a chance here because the Saints have been great this season. Kamara's been one of the best running backs in the league. Not the best. Derrick Henry really takes that spot over 2,000 rushing yards. King Henry, the best running back in the league, and Dalvin Cook has been electric as well. But Kamara's been great, and we've seen a decline from their franchise quarterback in Drew Brees. But they're 12-14. They're a 2-seed for a reason, and they're a great team. Even with Drew Brees declining, last game he was still able to throw over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ty Montgomery, who was in for Kamara, is looking pretty good. The receiving core is looking good with Sanders, but it's really not the offense that we talk about with this team. It's the defense. They're able to get interceptions. Lattimore and Jenkins out there have been playing lights out recently, and the defense overall is what's going to carry this team. And you've got one of the best running backs in the league, so I think the Saints, there's some things that I don't really like about them, but they're going to go far, or at least they're going to go past the Bears. They're probably not going to beat the Packers, but the Saints are a team that could be pretty scary, and I really don't see the Bears having a chance because I don't trust Trubisky. I don't trust a lot of issues they have on their team, but the Saints are more well-rounded, and while they have their issues, I definitely think they're better than the Bears. And, probably not enough to beat the Packers, but I see the Saints beating the Bears pretty easily in this matchup. But like you said, anything can happen. But this is one of those matchups where there's pretty much a set winner before the game happens. Like with Titans-Ravens, it could go either way, but I think Saints-Bears is pretty much wrapped up with the Saints taking the game.
Next up, we have the Rams playing the Seahawks, the 6-seed Rams playing the 3-seed Seahawks. So for the Rams, one of my teams I root for, hometown team for me. My dad grew up a Rams fan. When they came back to LA, I kind of adopted them, even being a diehard Colts fan at the time. So they're kind of my second team. And as much as I would love to see them win this game, as much as I think they can win this game because they've shown time and time again their defense is able to shut down the Seahawks offense. They won because of their defense is able to shut them down one game, and they also lost one game. but their defense still played decently well. Seahawks only scored 20 points. Just the offense struggled, just really struggled, only scoring 9 in that game. The defense is just strong suit of this team. There hasn't been a team that scored over. I don't think there's been a team that scored 30 since I don't know when. Last time this team scored 30 was actually the Bills back in week 3, and besides that, no team has scored 30 or more. The highest any team has scored besides that one Bills game where they lost 35-32 was the Dolphins and the Cardinals both scored 28 on them. The Rams were able to win one of those games. They lost to the Dolphins, beat the Cardinals. I think this could be a dangerous team, but odds are they'll be without Goff in the first round, which is going to be a problem. You could say as much as you want about Goff, but in the end, you want to have Goff over John Wolford in the playoffs. John Wolford last game wasn't too bad. He won the game. That's what mattered. But that offense only scored 18 points. It really got bailed out by the D, which held the Cardinals to 7 points. But a really good offense in the Cardinals, which is one of the best rushing attacks in the league. And you also know what Kyler can do with his weapons downfield with Larry Fitzgerald and DeAndre Hopkins. So a good effort by the defense. John Wolford had 231 yards, 0 touchdowns and 1 interception. On 20 for 38. Only got sacked 2 times as well. The offensive line holds up. He's got good mobility. He could run it. He had 6 rushes for 56 yards, and a couple important big runs on third downs, fourth downs-ish. And also, we know what that running game can do with Cam Akers when it gets going. Against the Seahawks, they've shown they can beat this team, and they don't need the offense to beat this team, but they're going to need them to score more than 9 points like they did the last time they faced them. 18 could be enough to beat them. They held the Seahawks to 16 when they beat them, and they only scored 23. So really, it's really just going to be whether or not this defense can hold the Seahawks below, I'd say, 20-ish. And if all offenses have to do from then on is just play pretty average against, a defense that was one of the worst in the league to start the season and has improved recently, but is still not a good defense. You definitely should score 20 plus on, which would be a very average performance in my mind, scoring in the 20s against this defense. So all offense really needs to do is be average, and I think the defense could potentially step up. But like I said, the problem is I don't know about this offense without Goff. You could say, like I said, Goff, you could say that you don't like him and all that stuff, but in the end, I feel like he has playoff experience and he could probably get the job done and score those points. While if John Wolford doesn't have a good running game, I don't think they're going to be able to score enough to beat the Seahawks team.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Seahawks. 12-4. They're a really good team. Russell Wilson. He didn't have a bad season by any means, but he kind of went down from his MVP first few games. Remember when Russ was cooking when that was all going around, but he's definitely not getting his MVP this season. But 40 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's nothing to be sad about. Over 4,000 yards, and the team's playing good. Chris Carson, he's a decent running back. He's had around 700 yards, and you've got a solid defense. Nothing too special. Obviously, you've got Blitz Boy, aka Jamal Adams. Everyone likes to clown on him, but at the end of the day, the Seahawks team is 12-4 for a reason. They won the stacked NFC West. Well, they were stacked earlier in the season. Then some of the teams started to falter, but I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup. They were able to beat the Rams 20-9, but obviously the Rams are a better team than that. Jared Goff had a pretty bad game, and if they have Jared Goff, it's going to be competitive. And I have the Seahawks winning if I had to bet on it. I would definitely have the Seahawks winning, but I really wouldn't. I think it'd be kind of dumb to say the Seahawks have it in the bag. The spread is -4.5 to the Seahawks, so I would bet on the Seahawks. But you can't count the Rams out. We've seen them get to the Super Bowl before. Sean McVay could probably come up with something, pull out of his bag of tricks, and I really don't think it matters that the Rams have been having a tough few games. I think they can bounce back. And I think it's going to be a great matchup. But the Seahawks have been playing well. If Jamal Adams is fully healthy, I think that gives them more of a chance. If Russ didn't play like the Russ in the beginning of the season, I think they're going to be great. But this is going to be a competitive matchup. But I really don't see either of these teams moving farther than this. Seahawks will have to go against either the Washington football team or the Buccaneers. And I think if the Buccaneers win that game, it's going to be really tough for the Seahawks to get past it. And I think it's going to be really tough for the Rams to get past them as well. and they're most likely going against the Packers. So I think both of these teams are good teams, but I don't see any of them being that competitive going down later into the playoffs.
Next up, we have the Buccaneers at the Washington football team. So for the Buccaneers, you're the 5 seed, but you're the favorite in this game, which you don't normally see the wildcard team being favored by 8.5 points, but that's the case when you have the wildcard team is 11-5 and the division winner is 7-9. So, and for the Buccaneers, they really this I feel like you could split this season into 4 different parts. You had the beginning where there was a couple losses which kind of hurt. That opening week Saints loss, that loss to the Bears on Thursday night in week 5, where there's lots of penalties, that mental error by Brady on that final drive. But you also had 3 wins against some bad team, 3 close wins against bad teams, where it was either a 1-score game or a score that really didn't show how close the game actually was. Maybe the Buccaneers got kind of garbage time touchdown that put the game away, but didn't really matter in the end. And then you had a stretch of games where they absolutely dominated against the Packers and Raiders, where they beat the Packers 30-10, the Raiders 45-20. But then they had a big stretch for the bye where they got very sketchy. They looked dominant going into that Giants Monday Night Football game. They were supposed to destroy them. The Giants came out and gave them a tough fight. They ended up winning the game, but the Giants gave them a tough fight. And then they went on, and then they got absolutely destroyed by the Saints, 38-3. They did beat the Panthers next, but it's the Panthers, and they lost 2 close games to the Rams and the Chiefs. Which those are 2 good teams. It's forgivable, but it was a tough stretch. I think that made people lose hope in the Buccaneers. But they won 4 straight games. Then they had the bye week, and they won 4 straight games after that to close out the season and finish 11-5 and get that number 1 wild card spot. And play, a team they definitely should be beating in this first round in the football team. We know what their offense can do with the weapons. We've seen it recently. They've been turning it up right now. Brady's been connecting with all their weapons. Mike Evans, who did get injured last game, we'll see on how he will. I don't know whether or not he's going to be playing. I don't know if they've released his stats for the game, this upcoming game. If they have, I haven't seen it. But we obviously know that Mike Evans, if he's playing, will be great. Chris Godwin, we know what he can do. And Antonio Brown's been resurgent with the Buccaneers. Had a great game last game against the Falcons. And the defense as well. We saw what they could do earlier in the year, shutting down some teams. They shut down, the Packers to 10 points. They played a lot. They got some. The defense was the strength of the team earlier in the year when they got some of those close wins. But now it seems like the offense is the strength. The defense letting up some higher scores recently. Not too high, nothing over 30 since that blowout Saints loss. And they had a couple good games against teams like the Lions, and they held them to 7, held the Vikings to 14. But I think the defense can be exploited by a good offense, but football team is not a great offense. They're a defensive-led team as well. So this team, I think that this game is either going to be a grit and grind defensive game, or the Buccaneers are actually blow the doors off the football team. Just depends on what happens with this offense, the Buccaneers offense, and how they can handle the Washington defense. Because if they can, throw it all over the place in Washington defense, if they can run well on the Washington defense, it's going to be a blowout because the Washington offense won't be able to keep up. But so we'll see what happens. I think that the Buccaneers definitely have an opportunity for a big blowout win this upcoming week. I would like to see it be a close game. I always like to see good football, good entertaining games, especially in the playoffs. But this game is shaping out to be a blowout for the Buccaneers, and I don't see it really being that close. I mean, every playoff team is there for a reason, but this could be a blowout. And, there are blowout playoff games. We saw one in the NFC Championship game just a few years ago when the Eagles absolutely destroyed the Vikings, and those were 2 really good teams. So I think it's going to be a blowout, but there's always still a chance, like I said when I was talking about the Bears. So Buccaneers, I think it's going to be shaping out to be a blowout win for you.
I mean, talking about the 7-9 Washington football team, this is a strange team to say has a higher seed than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, they won the NFC East, the NFC least, should I say, but they're not a team that is that scary. I'm sorry to say, but Alex Smith, sure, comeback player of the year. We all love Alex Smith. We love the feel-good story of Alex Smith and Ron Rivera, but the Washington football team just isn't that great of a team, and I don't think they're going to be able to beat the Buccaneers. Alex Smith has 6 touchdowns and 8 interceptions on the season. Dwayne Haskins is no longer on the team. You wouldn't want Kyle Allen starting. I mean, you have a stud running back in Antonio Gibson. He's definitely been a breakout player this season. 800 yards and 11 touchdowns on 170 carries. And we have J.D. McKissick, who's also been great this season, especially catching the ball. And you've got Terry McLaurin, who has over 1,000 yards. But the real thing here, I mean, the real part of the team is their defense, definitely. You've got candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year in Chase Young, and you've got some solid players on the defensive side, but there's really not much to say about the football team because they're really not much of a big team in this playoffs. I think it hinders them more to be in the playoffs than helping them because they're really a team that's still rebuilding or at least still working on becoming a better team. And when you go 7-9, you really don't deserve to be in the playoffs. But when you're in the NFC East, I mean, you are the playoff team. But I think this is just going to hinder the football team, and it's going to make them. It's going to hinder them even worse because there's teams that didn't make the playoffs that are better than this team that are going to get higher picks. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals. I'm biased with the Chargers. The Chargers finished out the season with 4 wins. And, I mean, the football team are 7-9. They really need another good pick. They need good free agency. And I think going to the playoffs is going to hurt them because, really, you're about to get whooped by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, they had a chance, but when Chase Young said, I want Tom, that's it. In my opinion, the chances just flipped away because, fate is fate, and Tom Brady is going to take it personal like the Michael Jordan meme. And, they really didn't have much of a chance going in, but I don't think they have a big chance. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to wrap this one up. They've got a stellar receiving core, a decent defense. Tom Brady is playing well. He's not the best Tom Brady we've ever seen, but in the past few games, he's been playing phenomenal. He's been playing lights out. I believe it was a stat where in his 4 quarters, not a full game, but like split up, he had more yards than in the record game. So if he played those 4 quarters in one game, he would have the record for most yards in the game. And he's been playing like a stud. So if they take this momentum going into this playoff game, I really think they're going to be able to win. And I mean, I said that the Buccaneers weren't going to be going that far, even if they won. I think they can beat the Seahawks or the Rams. I don't think they can beat either the Packers or the Saints, but they're a team that's going to be good. I definitely see them beating this Washington team, but the Buccaneers are a good team. They're going to be able to go far. I don't see them getting to the Super Bowl like we all predicted back in the beginning of the season, but they're not a bad team. I think they're going to be pretty good this season or this postseason, and I think they're going to be Washington. And Washington had a good season for the NFC East. Chase Young had a great season, but I really don't see him going any further than this.
Now moving into the AFC, we'll start off with the Colts at the Bills. So the Colts, my number 1 team. Oh man, I love the Colts, but I'm gonna keep this realistic. First I'm gonna start with how the season has gone, up and down, kind of similar. I think it's kind of similar to the Buccaneers season, how I can split it into 4 different categories, like kind of like groups, 4 different stages. I think we could start off with that first 5 weeks where really that defense shined in those 3 middle games with the Vikings, Jets, and Bears holding them all to 11 points or under. Looked like the best defense in the league. Over that stretch of time, they forced turnovers. The quarterbacks couldn't do anything. Running game couldn't do anything. No one could do anything on the defense. And the offense was still pretty good. But they had 2 tough losses sandwiched over those 3 great wins against the Jaguars and the Bears. The Colts who've lost week 1 the past, 8 years, I want to say, 7 or 8 years. I guess you could say wasn't surprised I lost week 1 again. But both those losses, you could definitely say Philip Rivers had a big part to play in that. He threw 2 picks, both of them, in both losses. You could definitely say, or he was a big problem in those losses, maybe the biggest problem. So, but then week 6, they played the Bengals and they had that amazing comeback win. And week 7 was a bye, but then after that, they had a big stretch where Philip Rivers looked amazing. The team looked amazing. The offense looked amazing. The defense wasn't as strong as it was before, but it was still getting takeaways. you kind of split it. That Week 6 game, you could put that into like part 1 and part 2. The first half being part 1 when they just couldn't do it, where it was kind of iffy, but then half 2 being where everything was clicking for them, and everything was clicking over this stretch. 4 or 5 games. They had one game in the middle of it where they lost to the Ravens that kind of got thrown around, but that's okay if you're going to 4-1 is fine over the course of 5 games, especially that big win. They get 2 big wins against the Titans and the Packers right after that to rebound. They crushed the Titans in Tennessee on Thursday night, and they also beat a close game to the Packers in overtime. But then after that, you had a game against the Titans where you got absolutely smoked. And this is part 3, which is all on its own, this one game, which really kind of brought the hopes of kind of took Colts from a Super Bowl team in some people's minds to potentially missing the playoffs after this game happened. But then part 4, they got 3 straight convincing wins. Well, not convincing wins. One convincing win against a potential playoff team, the Raiders, and then 2 close games. But it was a divisional rival where they had turnovers late to win the game, and then lost to the Steelers, which they still played really well, and it just that second half was not good. But those 30 minutes of football I wouldn't say made them a worse team than they were 30 minutes before it. And then a recent win to get them into playoffs against the Jaguars. But if we're keeping it realistic, they just don't match up well against the Bills. Colts are a good team. They're not your typical 7 seed. Last year the 6th seed for the AFC was the Titans, who were 9-7. The 7th seed would have been 8-18. 7th seed this year, the NFC, 8-18. But the Colts are 7th seed at 11-5. Definitely, deserving of a higher seed if you think about it. But also, the AFC so stacked this year. It just worked out unfortunately for them. I think their defense is built to stop the run more than the pass. Their secondary can still get interceptions. They can still play pretty well. But against a team like Buffalo, I think that they're going to tear that secondary apart. They don't really need the run game, so the Colts run incredible run defense won't be too much of a factor. When I say that incredible run defense, the only run game that can really go get through that defense is Derrick Henry and the Titans. And the one game where they dominated, the Colts didn't even have their number 1 run stopper, DeForest Buckner. So I think it's just they just don't match up well against the Bills. I think they could potentially make it close and maybe pull out a win, just because when this team is playing at its very best, they're as good as almost anybody. But I just don't think they match up very well against this Bills team. It's going to be tough this week, but I'm still going to hold out hope.
I definitely think Colts fans should have hope going into this, but I really think the Bills are one of the best teams, top 3 in the league. I mean, you've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league Josh Allen. He had 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a passer rating of 107 on average. I mean, like you said, the running game isn't going to be that big of a factor since the Colts' run defense is very good. But Devin Singletary and Zach Moss will still be able to do some stuff, not as much. But the main part of this offense is definitely going to be the passing. I mean, you've got Stephon Diggs, who had 1,500 yards. He had 127 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 8 touchdowns. You still got guys like Cole Beasley, who almost had a 1,000-yard season. He had 4 touchdowns. You've got a guy like Gabriel Davis, who had 7 touchdowns, 600 yards. I mean, really, everyone is getting a ball. Everyone's getting touches on this, or in this wide receiver core, and I really think it's going to be very scary for this Colts defense. They're a phenomenal defense, but the Bills are a phenomenal passing offense, and they've got a pretty good rushing offense to go with that. And Josh Allen, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Like I said, I just think it's going to be scary for this Colts team. I mean, if Phillip Rivers can play well, like I want him to, since I'm a lifelong Chargers fan, I want to see Phillip get success, but it's going to be tough for him to do that, especially if he's throwing picks, because you've got guys like Tre'Davious White with 3 picked in the season, and you've really got a bunch of players. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different players with an interception. Most of them got 2 or more. It's just going to be scary. I really don't see the Colts winning this one, but they can win this one. They're a really good team. Like you said, they're not your average 7th seed. But the Bills are not your average 2nd seed as well, so it's going to be tough for the Colts to win this one. They definitely can. Don't write them out. But the Bills are not my favorite to win the entire Super Bowl, but they're definitely there. I think they can beat the Chiefs. I don't know if they can beat the Packers, to be honest, but the Bills, top 3 team, easily in my opinion, and I think it's going to be very tough for the Colts. But we've seen upsets before. We saw the Eagles beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl, so definitely there's upsets that are there, or upsets that can happen. But I really don't see the Colts winning this one.
Next up, we have the 6-seeded Browns playing 3-seeded Steelers. For the Browns, you ended that playoff drought, Amazing for Browns fans. The bad thing is that's probably going to be it. But this is a divisional rival, Yes, you almost beat them last week, but they were sitting all of their starters, and they didn't have Big Ben, they didn't have TJ Watt. They were missing most of their core guys. Sorry, you did beat them last week, but they're missing most of their core guys. The one time you played them when they had all their guys, granted it was a little bit early. Granted it was a little bit earlier in the season, but week 6. I mean, a little early in the season, but you still got blown out 38-7. At the time, that was the Steelers playing at their very best when they were on that undefeated run. But still, I think the Steelers are weaker than they were then, and you're stronger than you were then. But I still think that it's going to be tough against the Steelers, the Browns, who have a really good offense and not great defense. The defense hasn't, it's been better recently. It's been better. It was terrible in the first 2 weeks, but it's been better. You held the Giants to 6 points. You held the Steelers to 22. Yeah, I'm kind of stretching here. It has not been good. It has not been good. The Titans scored 35. The Ravens scored 47. The Jets scored 23. I mean, even though it's only 23, it's still a lot for the Jets. It hasn't been good, but it's been better than it was at the beginning of the season, where you were letting over 30, when you let people score over 30 on pretty much every game. But those games where you held the teams to low scores were against bad teams or teams that were sitting their starters. So I don't know. I think it's definitely going to be. It's either going to be. I feel like if the Browns are going to win, they're going to win in a shootout. I mean, unless it's like a really snowy game or something like that. But still, it still probably won't be. They won't win a game that's like 20-16. They just don't play those types of games. They got a run-oriented offense, yes, but their defense can't play that type of game. So we'll see what happens here. I think it's going to all depend on your passing game, because the run game is obviously the strength of the offense, but we don't have a good defense to back that up. Sometimes that's kind of tough when it comes down to a shootout. So we'll see. I think it's going to come down to the passing offense on whether or not they are going to come out of this game with a win.
All right, and the opponents for the Cleveland Browns are going to be the Steelers. I mean, they played last game of the season. The Browns won, but the Steelers did have Mason Rudolph. But, I mean, Mason Rudolph balled out. He had 315 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. I mean, it's not the best game we've ever seen, but for a backup to come in to play in the last game of the season, it was great, even though they took the loss. I mean, I still think Big Ben maybe would have let him to win, but this is really a preview to see what we're going to get. I mean, Jarvis Landry didn't have the best game. The receiving core for the Browns didn't have the best game, so both teams definitely had some hiccups, but this Steelers team is going to have a tough time, I think, against the Browns, and they're definitely going to have a tough time against the winner of Titans-Ravens. The Steelers started off the team, everyone thought they're going undefeated, and then we really saw the cracks in the team. We really saw the pretenders come out a little bit there. I think the wins got a little bit into their head. I think they were they were feeling themselves a little bit too much, and they kind of faltered. They kind of they fell off. I mean, they were regarded as the best team in the league for like 6, 7, maybe 8 weeks, and then one day everything just collapsed. They started to lose the games. They did gain a little bit of traction. They were able to get a win against the Colts, but they lost against the football team, Bills, Bengals, and now the Browns. And I think that Colts game was definitely winnable for the Colts, just some mistakes. And I think they are, in my opinion, a better team than the Steelers. But the Steelers, they're the 3rd seed, but I don't trust this team at all. Big Ben is getting older. They do have a good defense. The Steelers always have a good defense, but Ben Roethlisberger is getting older. He did have around 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, which is not bad. But I don't trust this receiving core. Deontay Johnson has a bunch of drops in the season. Chase Claypool is really the only bright spot on this receiving core because Juju Smith-Schuster has faltered. Eric Ebron has not been good. Really, the receiving core has struggled as of late. Deontay Johnson, if he can stop dropping the ball so much, I think they're going to be a lot better. Rushing, you've got James Conner, who had 700 yards in the season, which is pretty good. But I don't know if I can trust this team. They lost three times in a row, and two of those teams were really, really bad. I mean, you lost the football team, who were bad, and you lost to the Bengals, who were very, very, no offense to Bengals fans, but you guys were not good this season. I mean, you lost to the Browns, which is respectable. You lost to the Bills, which is very respectable because the Bills, in my opinion, are one of the best teams in the league. Like I said, top three. But I don't trust the Steelers team. I definitely think they can win this game, but going farther, I can't see it. I can't see them beating the Titans or the Ravens, and I for sure can't see them beating either the Bills or the Chiefs because most likely we're getting the Bills and the Chiefs moving on, or one of those teams moving on. So I don't trust the Steelers team. If you ask me maybe 6 or 7 weeks in the season, I'd say, oh, for sure, they're probably going to go to the Super Bowl. But now after we've seen the cracks in the team, we've seen the cracks in the receiving core, we've seen some cracks on defense, I can't trust this team. I mean, you've got T.J. Watt, probably the best defensive player this season, but I cannot trust the Steelers team.
All right, next game, we have the 5-seed Ravens playing the 4-seed Titans. So, me, a Colts fan, does not want to see the Titans win this game. And for the Ravens, I think it's very realistic it can beat this team. Yes, the Titans have beat the Ravens once this season, and also twice in 2020, because technically they beat them last season in the playoffs, which was technically 2020. But it's going to be close. It's kind of a toss-up because, yes, the Titans are, they've proved they can beat this team. But recently, they have not been great. I mean, they lost to the Packers 40-14, and that Ravens win is all the way back in Week 11. That was over a month ago, almost 2 months ago. It will be almost 2 months ago by the time they play the Ravens. And they still play them really tough in OT, and the Ravens have been better since then. We can all agree that put them at 6-4. And they lost a close from the Steelers, but since then they've won out and they've gone 5-0 after 3 straight losses. And I think they just have the momentum right now. And I think momentum is a huge thing going into wild card weekend. Maybe not so much the divisional round because teams, yes, a team off bye doesn't really have momentum, but they have that extra time to prepare. So I think momentum kind of doesn't matter at that point. But in the wild card, I think momentum definitely matters in how you've been playing, towards the end of the regular season. And I think the Ravens have been playing better, which gives them, I think, in my opinion, a really good chance to win. But it's definitely close. I'm not saying the Titans aren't going to win this game. And just because the Titans beat them, Ravens doesn't mean the Ravens can't win this game either. So it's going to be tough for the Ravens, a team that, they have a good defense and a really good running game. But, we still know that they can air it out. We've seen that, they can air it out. We know what Lamar can do. He hasn't done much of it this season, but we know what he can do with his arm. And recently he's been better, showing us what he can do with his legs. And I think that this is a Ravens team that really still hasn't, they still haven't reached what they could be in terms of their peak performance. And, hopefully for Ravens fans that comes around right now and they can reach their peak right now come playoff time. I think we've seen the best of the Titans. I don't think we've seen the best of the Ravens just yet. So that's why I think the Ravens have a really good chance to win this game. But still the Titans. It's going to be a close one.
Moving on to the Tennessee Titans. I mean, they're a 4 seed. The AFC South was a very tough division. I would have loved to see the Colts winning it, but that means we'd have to see the Titans losing to Houston. And obviously, Titans barely pulled out 41-38. Deshaun Watson tried his best, but you really can't do much there. Poor Deshaun Watson. I know this isn't about the Texans, but poor guy's trying his best out there, and he really couldn't do anything without any real weapons. Will Fuller was out, popped for PEDs a few weeks back. But talking about the Titans, I like this Titans team. Tannehill's been very good this season. He just has around a 106 passer rating, 33 touchdowns, 7 receptions. almost 4,000 yards. And, oh, yeah, I forgot. King Henry, 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns. This is unheard. This is obscene. This is unheard of. This is crazy. I can't even wrap my mind around it. He's way too good. I mean, sure, he's got 378 rushing attempts, but he has 378 rushing attempts because he's this good. He's phenomenal. He's the best running back in the league. No question about it. I mean, no one can even come close. And you've got A.J. Brown, a 1,000-yard season for him, 11 touchdowns. Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Ferkser. I mean, Ferkser's an MMG meme if you happen to watch MMG. And, I mean, you've got a good defense, too. You've got Kevin Byard, Malcolm Butler. I like this team. I think that the Colts probably could have won the division. I don't think this Titan team is the best in the world, but I think both the Colts and Titans are phenomenal teams. And I really love watching this Titans team just because of Derrick Henry. Something amazing happens every game. The defense is solid. Like I said, Malcolm Butler with 4 interceptions, Amani Hooker with 4 interceptions. It's just a fun team to watch, especially on offense. If Tannehill can carry that momentum, and especially if Derrick Henry can carry that momentum, I can see this team going far in the playoffs. I can see this team beating the Ravens, but the Ravens are going to be a tough team if Lamar plays like MVP Lamar. And if the Titans win, I can definitely see them beating the Steelers or Browns easy. Bills, Colts, Chiefs, maybe not. Colts, Titans will be a very close game, but Bills, Chiefs versus Titans, I don't see that being a close game, but it's a very fun team to watch and a very interesting team, and you've got the best running back in the league. So I love to watch this team. Wish the Colts could have won the division, but it's going to be a fun team to watch the playoffs.
And now we're going to be talking about the two teams on bye. So I'll talk about the Chiefs and the AFC, and I'll talk about the Packers. And after that, we will do our predictions. We'll make the predictions quick. Don't worry, we won't spend too much time on each game. Just giving you our predictions. We won't analyze it too much. For the Chiefs, though, you're the Super Bowl winners last year. You could go back-to-back this year. You have the best record in the league. A lot of people have you as their favorite. And for good reason. You have shown time and time again that you are one of, if not the best team in the NFL. I mean, you didn't lose a single game except for that one game against the Raiders, which we lost a very close game. And also against the Chargers where you were sitting your starters. So, it wasn't like you got blown out, recently. That game that lost against the Raiders a long time ago, a lot earlier in the season. Then they won a close one, then they get blown out. And now it was a Raiders team that they were playing really well at the time, especially offensively. And then the Chargers, that game, you resting your starters. So I think to say that this team isn't a top 3 favorite right now is just beyond me, right? Because of just how they've played all season. I can understand if you don't want to put them number 1. I think they've earned a number 1 spot in terms of making a power ranking or stuff. I'm not saying they've definitely they're deserving of it, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they're the best team in the league and that you got to predict them in your predictions or something like that. But they've definitely, if you were to put them number 1, if you were to predict them to win the Super Bowl, they would be definitely deserving of it with how they played all season long, and they've proved it. Their offense is still great. Their defense obviously is good at times. It's not the best, but it's good at times, and it makes plays, and I think this is a Super Bowl winning team, and that's just a fact of the matter, and they're going to be in the contention.
Speaking about another team that's in contention, Green Bay Packers. I made this prediction earlier in the year. I said the Packers were going to be my Super Bowl favorites, and they were going to win the Super Bowl, and for a few weeks it looked like it was a bad prediction, but the Packers really came through. 13-3, Aaron Rodgers MVP. If Aaron Rodgers does not win MVP, then it's rigged. If Mahomes wins MVP, it's rigged. Mahomes has around 16 dropped interceptions this season. It's a no-brainer. It's gonna be, or it has to be, Aaron Rodgers. 4,300 yards, 48 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He almost had a 50 touchdown season with only 5 interceptions. That's unheard of. Aaron Jones had over 1,000 yards on the ground, 9 rushing touchdowns. The best receiver in football, Devontae Adams, 1,300 yards. Devontae Adams is a fantasy monster with 8 touchdowns, and he still missed like 3 or 4 games, I believe. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has 690 yards and 6 touchdowns. Tunyon had 11 touchdowns, and he didn't even play. I don't believe he played every single game this season. This team is just stacked on offense. They're an offensive powerhouse. They've got a phenomenal running back, but they've got the best wide receiver in the league, in my opinion. The defense is really the worst part about this team. It's not terrible. You've got Darnell Savage, Jair Alexander, but this team is a good team on offense, especially. Their defense might be the reason why they falter just a little bit, but their offense is just so good. I can see them beating every team here. It's going to be tough against the Chiefs if they make it back. It's going to be tough against the Bills. And I really think their only opposition in the NFC is the Saints. So the really only opposition is the Chiefs, Bills, and Saints. But phenomenal team, phenomenal offense. I see this team going very far, and they're my Super Bowl favorites for this season.
Now time for predictions. I think I'll just do mine all at once. Jack will do his all at once. So I'll start with the first round. I'm going to make this quick. So Bills versus Colts, I explained it. I think the Colts don't have much of a chance. They have a chance, but not much of one. I'm going to pick the Bills here. I explained my reason. It's not a good matchup for the Colts. Definitely are deserving of making it to second round, but it's not, the right matchup for them in order to do that. And then I think that the Steelers will beat the Browns once again. I think the Steelers just kind of own the Browns. I think the Browns, you broke that playoff drought, but I think that's as far as it's going to go for you. And then, like I said, I think I don't know if the offense will be able to keep it in a shootout, because I think that's what's going to come down to. If they have to win, it's going to be a shootout. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep up, if they'll be able to win with that. And then I think that the Ravens will beat the Titans. Could be a little biased because I'm not a fan of the Titans, as a Colts fan. But I do think I could explain why I think the Ravens have the momentum. And, yeah, but still very close. It's kind of a toss-up for me. I feel like this is a game that's going to come around to the wire, maybe go into OT. And then the NFC, I have the Saints beating the Bears. Pretty self-explanatory. It's going to take I think it would be considered the biggest upset of the playoffs. The Bears are able to pull out this win. Maybe unless the football team beat the Buccaneers. But I think the Buccaneers will beat the football team. I think that's also very self-explanatory. Be a huge upset that the football team beat the Buccaneers. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Buccaneers could be shaping up for a blowout, like I said. And then I think that the Seahawks will beat the Rams. If Jared Goff doesn't play, I would say that they'll beat the Rams. But if he does play, I think the Rams I might end up picking the Rams if Goff does play, just because I think that this defense, granted, you could say the same. I was going to say the defense, they know the Seahawks team. They've played them twice already this season. But you say the same thing with the Seahawks offense. Oh, they know the Rams defense. They've played them twice this season. But we'll see. I think, we'll see. I think it's going to be a battle. Like, does the offensive team win? Does the defensive team win? And I think that even if the defensive team technically, quote unquote, wins and holds that offense to limited amounts of points, being like somewhere below 20, I just think that the defensive team offense will be, I don't know if it's going to be able to score any more than like 20. So we'll see. But I'm going to pick the Seahawks here. Pains me to have both my teams losing in the first round. In the second round, AFC Chiefs versus Ravens. I think you can't beat Andy Reid off a bye. I'm going to pick the Chiefs here. I think they're the better team and also have that bye week to help out. And then the Bills versus the Steelers. I think the Bills win another one. They win the rematch. A lot of people like to say that they like to pick the team that if they play each other in the regular season. A lot of people like to pick the team that lost that regular season game. I think it's just some sort of analytics move, but I think that the Bills are just going to win this one. I think that the Steelers have just been on a decline ever since that Bills lost, really a little bit before that when they lost the football team. But I think that the Bills are going to win this game just because I think they match up better. I think that the offense will tear the defense apart. And then I don't think the Steelers offense will keep up. And then in the NFC, I say the Packers beat the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers beat the Packers early in the season, but I think the Packers have improved since then. I think they're now a top 3 team in the league. I think that the better team, and also the bye week definitely helps. Like I said before, that's why I think the bye week is so crucial. Also, if you're the 1 seed, and then the Saints versus the Seahawks is tough. I had the Seahawks in my midseason predictions coming out of the NFC as a winner, and the Saints in my preseason predictions, which didn't go on this channel. But they were my preseason pick. Jack confirmed that they were my preseason pick to win the Super Bowl, so to come out of the NFC as well. So I don't know about this one. I'm gonna go with the Saints because I think I'm gonna. It's kind of spoiling what I think for my Super Bowl. I'm gonna go with my gut, like I did, which I shouldn't have, which I should have in mid-season predictions. So I'm gonna go with my gut here and say the Saints. Even though they're dealing with some injuries right now, I think that Drew Brees is just gonna sound. I think like people tease him for having a quote unquote noodle arm, but I don't know. I just have this weird feeling about what Drew Brees can do. I still think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now. I think he'll win this matchup against Russell Wilson. Both players looking for their second ring. Both players that should have an MVP on their resume but don't. I think Brees will win, though. I think he has a better defense, and that's one of the main reasons why. And the AFC Championship game, I have the Chiefs and the Bills playing each other. It's just tough. It could go either way. If you pick the Bills, makes sense. Pick the Chiefs, makes sense. But I'm going to go, personally, I'm going to go with the Bills because I think that the Bills is a team with a defense that this year was supposed to be a lot better than it is. And I think that this could be a cold game, snowy weather, something of the sort, where I think it'll be tough conditions for offenses to play in. And I think that the Bills, so I believe I want to say a better running game. I mean, this could go either way. It's really just a coin flip, like heads or tails, heads Bills, Chiefs tails. It's kind of pretty much guesswork at this point. Really hard to explain myself. You could say that you can make such a great argument for the Chiefs, but also such a great argument for the Bills. They're just so close. I feel like they're both passing-oriented offenses, which with good defense is not great. I just really don't know, but I'm gonna go with the Bills here. Just a weird gut feeling. But don't worry, Chiefs fans. You'll probably be back at it again next year. I think the Chiefs are going to be contenders for the next decade or so. So we'll have many more opportunities as this decade goes along. And the NFC Packers for Saints. I want to trust my gut and go to the Saints, but I'm going to say Packers here. I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers in his MVP season, which he should win, is going to knock off the Saints. And it's tough because I wanted to see Drew Brees go out on top. I really like Brees, but I think that just the Packers offense, yes, defense wins championships. Yes, the Saints have better defense than the Packers, but I think that the Packers offense is too good that for the Saints D to stop it. It has been too good all season long. I think the Saints D is good enough to stop the Seahawks D, but not the Packers D. Packers versus Bills in the Super Bowl. This one is tough. I honestly don't know because they're both teams, once again, off passing-oriented offenses with good, not great defenses. That's what most of these teams are. I think of these, top teams in the league right now. The only team that I said would make it to the semifinals that doesn't have one of these like rosters built like that as the Saints, who are more of a defensive-led team. But I really don't know. It's going to be a shootout Super Bowl. I think this would be entertaining if it happened. Josh Allen versus Aaron Rodgers, two great quarterbacks, both with great weapons to work with. Aaron Rodgers, people might say, has some okay weapons, but I guess you could say like he makes a lot, but I think he definitely does make guys like Tunyon and MVS look a lot better than they might actually be. But he got Devontae Adams, he's got Aaron Jones. I think Tunyon's still been good. He should have made the Pro Bowl this year. And then for the Bills, they have Diggs, they have John Brown coming back for the playoffs. They have, Devin Singletary and Zach Moss out of the backfield. And on defense, both teams have playmakers that can make plays. And really, this is going to be really tough for me. Another kind of guesswork thing. It's really hard to defend your choice just because for either of these teams, just because, the argument can be made for both. But for this one, I think the offenses are very similar. I think the Bills have slightly better weapons, so edge Bills there. But I think the Packers' rushing game can do better than the Bills' passing game. I think it's a tiny bit more balanced. Edge Packers there, so I think it's going to come to defense and special teams. And in this case, I think that the Bills honestly have more playmakers in that defense than the Packers do. Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Ed Oliver, Tremaine Edmonds, all like Pro Bowl caliber players. And, the Packers have those guys too. Darnell Savage is a good young guy. Jay Alexander is really good. They got Zadarius Smith. But I think the Bills just their defense is underperforming. I have a feeling that come playoff time, I think they will be able to get it done. They were a first-round exit last year. I think they're going to be motivated to go all the way this year and pick the Bills to win the Super Bowl.
Starting off with my picks, I'll start with the first round. I'll start with the AFC Bills versus Colts. I'm going to have the Bills taking this. I mean, I think Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I don't think he's the league MVP, but I think he's definitely up there in the contention. I think he's the second best. I think Patrick Mahomes, he's still skill-wise probably the best, but I think this season, in my opinion, just watching the games, Josh Allen is probably second next to Aaron Rodgers. I think the Colts have a chance, but I really have the Bills taking this one just because of how good they actually are. I mean, some people say they're better than the Packers. I definitely could see that. I don't really think so, but makes a lot of sense why they're second seed because they're such a good team. Moving on, Steelers versus Browns. I'm going to have the Browns taking this one. I mean, they did win. Sure, the Steelers didn't have some players starting, but I have the Browns. I have a Browns miracle here, you know. I have the Steelers crumbling and the Browns winning. This is really an upset pick here. Most people would probably pick the Steelers, but I have an upset from the Browns. I have Baker pulling something out of his bag of tricks, proving people wrong. I still don't think he's amazing, but I think he could, you know, prove some people wrong here. I think we're going to have another playoff miracle, just like the ones we love in NFL history, like the Minneapolis Miracle. But I have the Browns winning this one in a very entertaining game. Moving on to Titans versus Ravens. See, this is a very close game, and I don't really know what to say, but I'm going to say Titans. I just think that Derrick Henry's just unstoppable, and I think that even when Derrick Henry gets stopped, you still have someone like Tannehill that can sling the rock. You've got receivers that can catch the ball, and you still got a solid defense. So I have the Titans winning this one. It's going to be close, but if Lamar can play like MVP Lamar, I definitely think that the Ravens have a better chance, but I really don't see it happening. So I have the Titans winning this. I'll stay with the AFC. So moving on to the second round, we've got Chiefs versus Browns and Bills versus Titans. I'm going to have the Chiefs winning against the Browns. They pulled up they upsetted the Steelers in my bracket, but I don't see them beating the Chiefs. The Chiefs, I'm taking this from a video. I can't remember what. I'll credit it in the description once this video is done, but what the dude says, the Chiefs are a home run hitting team, but they strike out a lot. They score in intervals. They can score a lot, but there's times where, you know, they just make some sloppy mistakes. Patrick Mahomes dropping back too much, getting sacked. Just the team slowing down for a little bit. They've got their hot streaks, and they've got times where they're just ice cold. But I think the Chiefs are definitely still a top 3 team in the league. I mean, saying that they wouldn't, or they're saying that they aren't, is just foolish in my opinion. So I have them beating the Browns. Not really much to say here with them. We've got a closer game, which is Bills-Titans. I have the Bills winning. I definitely have them going far, but I think the Titans give them a scare. You know, Derrick Henry is just unstoppable. The passing offense is great. The defense is pretty solid. I have the Bills winning this, but I think the Titans can make it competitive. They can make it interesting. But I think these two picks are pretty much no-brainers. Really not much to say here. Moving on to the next round, we've got Chiefs versus Titans. Chiefs versus Bills. I have the Bills winning this. Some people have the Bills better than the Packers, like I said. I think the Bills are one of the best teams, and I think they can really upset the Chiefs here. I think this is the year that the Bills can shine. I think the Chiefs are going to regress a little bit in the playoffs. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. It's going to be very close. It's going to be one of the best games, I mean, in recent playoff memory, in my opinion. It could be even better than the Super Bowl game itself, but I think Bills, Chiefs, 2 top 3 teams in the league going at it. Josh Allen's going to be going at it. Patrick Mahomes is going to be going at it. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game to watch if it happens. Now, I'm pretty confident it's going to happen, and if it does, it's going to be phenomenal. I'm going to love it. I think we're all going to love it, and it's going to be a very interesting game to watch. And I have the Bills moving on to the Super Bowl, which means moving on to see. We've got Saints versus Bears. I have the Saints winning this game. I can't see them beating I can't see the Bears beating the Saints in this case. I think the Bears do have a chance, but the Saints, even though they have their holes, I think they're just that good. Kamara's playing, he's just that good. So really not much to say here. Brandon covered when he was talking about it. Seahawks versus Rams. I'm going to have the Seahawks winning. Sad to see the Rams go out, but I think the Seahawks are just that good. Russ has playoff experience. He's got Super Bowl experience, so he's going to be playing well. his team's not as good as when he went to the Super Bowl multiple times for the Legion of Boom, but I think they're going to be able to beat the Rams here. And I covered this when I was talking about the Buccaneers. Excuse me, when I was talking about Washington, so I'm not going to cover it here. I have the Buccaneers winning. Don't see Washington winning. And really, the nail in the coffin. The coffin was already nailed when we got that quote recently. I want Tom, really nailed the coffin. And even Bruce Arians said, be careful what you wish for. You don't mess with Tom Brady. You don't mess with the GOAT. You don't do that. That's just not something you do. And I really don't see Washington winning this game. Moving on, we've got Packers versus Buccaneers and Saints versus Seahawks. Packers versus Buccaneers. The Packers are the best team in the league, in my opinion, so I'm definitely going to have the Packers winning this one. I mean, the Buccaneers are good. AB has bounced back. He's been having a good season. I mean, I can't remember how many yards he has and how many receptions, but to have that, here, let me pull it up real quick. And while I'm pulling it up, I'll just talk about it. I mean, the Buccaneers have a phenomenal wide receiver core, but so do the Packers, and so they have the best quarterback in the league at the moment, in my opinion. So I really don't see the Buccaneers taking this from the Packers. And bringing up AB's stat line on the season, he's got 45 receptions for 483 yards, which is actually really solid. He didn't play the whole season. I mean, a guy like Mike Evans has 1,000 yards. He's got 70 receptions. Antonio Brown, he just came in. He was able to get 4 touchdowns in the process. But I don't see the Buccaneers really winning this. I mean, Tom Brady's having a good season, 40 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He's been playing phenomenal football as of late. And when I say phenomenal, I mean phenomenal. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the past few games, if you've watched the tapes and look at his stats. But a team like the Packers, they're just great. They've had a few scares, but they're such a good team that I really can't see them faltering. They're 13-3. They just beat the Bears convincingly. They beat the Titans convincingly. So I have the Packers moving on. And moving on to the next round, Saints versus Seahawks. I want to have the Seahawks taking the upset. I mean, I think the Saints have some holes that they're going to need to patch. And so do the Seahawks, but I see the Seahawks winning this one. I see Russ having a great game. I see the defense not breaking. I see them bending. I see Jamal Adams playing really well. Chris Carson's solid, but you've got a guy like DK Metcalf catching the ball. You've got a guy like Russell Wilson throwing the ball. Tyler Lockett catching. I mean, I just think it's going to be a phenomenal game. I don't think either of these teams are going to be able to beat the Packers, like I said earlier. But I really think that the Seahawks are going to pull this out. I mean, they've got playoff experience to the Saints, but I think that's going to be a very interesting game. It could go either way. It's kind of hard to tell who's going to win this game. But, I mean, if it was a team like the Bears going against the Seahawks, I could see the Seahawks easily winning. But the Saints are the 2 seed for a reason, and the Seahawks are 3 seed. So they're both really good, or both solid teams. I think this can be a great game. But I have the Seahawks on top, which means that we have Packers versus Seahawks. I'm not going to talk much on this one. Packers are going to win the game. I've raved enough about the Packers already. I've praised them enough, so I really don't think it's going to be beneficial for me to talk about them more. And we're going to have Packers versus Bills in the Super Bowl. I think this is going to be a phenomenal Super Bowl. It's going to be so entertaining if it happens. I'm confident that I think it's a chance. I don't know if my bracket's going to completely go as planned. I don't know if the same teams I think are going to win, but I think that it's going to end in the same result, Packers versus Bills, and it's going to be a slugfest. Both teams are offensive powerhouses. Both teams have top 3 quarterbacks. You got 2 of the best wide receivers going head-to-head. You've got a guy like Devontae Adams, and you've got Stephon Diggs. Both had phenomenal seasons. Both were monsters, and I think it's going to be a great game to watch. I mean, the defenses both don't have phenomenal defenses, but they both have pretty solid defenses, but I really see the passing game torching both these defenses up. You got Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley, and you got Valdez Scantling, Adams, Tunyon. I think it's going to be great to watch. Bills are 13-3, so are the Packers. Both are the best teams in their division, respectively, in my opinion. I mean, Chiefs have a better record, but I see the Chiefs breaking just a little bit. They got the championship. They're going to be back, but I think this season really isn't theirs. And I see the Packers winning this one over Buffalo. I mean, it's going to be very close. It could go either way. Most people would probably say the Bills, but I'm going to go the Packers on this one. I'm going to stick with my predictions from the earlier in the season, and I think the Packers are going to be able to take this win from the Bills. And I think the Packers are going to be Super Bowl champions once again. It's been a while, but Aaron Rodgers is playing phenomenal, and he's going to go back to a Super Bowl winning form. Even in his old age, I think Aaron Rodgers can clutch out versus one of the newer quarterbacks, Josh Allen. Sure not the old quarterbacks can still get it done versus the new guys. And I think it's going to be a phenomenal game to watch. So I have the Packers winning the Super Bowl in 2021.
Thank you for watching today's episode of JBA On Podcast. We will see you in our next episode. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. We're going to be back on our upload schedule. And like I said, see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.